Welcome to the podcast about venture capital, where investors and founders alike can learn how VCs make decisions and reach conviction. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back to TFR. Friend of the show and GP at 1984, Rami Adib, is back to talk predictions 2023. Rami joined us last year in one of the most popular episodes where he expressed his skepticism of SPACs, crypto, and the metaverse, while predicting that rising inflation would be one of the primary challenges of 2022. At the time, many in the audience took strong opposition to our comments. Hindsight may be 2020, but as I quickly scanned last year's episode, I can't imagine a set of predictions that could be more accurate. Personally, I love a good contrarian, especially one that I'm privileged to call a co-investor. With that said, Mr. Adib, welcome back.
Thank you, Nick. It's a pleasure to have you.
So, man, you missed the war in Ukraine. Something wrong with that crystal ball?
100%. I've missed it every single year. And that's why we try. Let me tell you the list of everything I've missed.
Okay. Sure.
In 2020, I missed COVID. We all missed COVID. Even though it was happening in China, it was on the front page of the New York Times. This like a few days in a row, the pandemic in China, but whatever.
It's my fault for having you back, Rami. I should have found somebody else.
Thank you. And then 2022, we entered worried about inflation. And of course, at the time, what was happening? Russian troops were amassing at the border of the Ukraine. We knew that was happening. There was the State Department, Biden was complaining about it, but it was just a small spark. And within 6 weeks, it became the largest land war in the history of, in Europe since World War II. And it has had, the war in Ukraine has had ridiculous ramifications on commodities, on the developing world. We're not really feeling it in the U.S. People in the rest of the world are hurting because of this. They're hurting because of lack of wheat, lack of flour. They're hurting because of increased inflation. They're hurting because they're unable to get the food. And so we always get it wrong. And that's why, actually, Nick, I try to not predict at all. I try to just explain what's happening today. I have no idea what will happen tomorrow.
Well, I think we're paid, in a certain respect, we're paid to be optimists. And sometimes we can see the writing on the wall, but we choose to not acknowledge it.
That's correct.
Well, good. So, okay, you missed the war on Ukraine. You hit on some other areas. Quick update on 1984. So you run a fund based in San Francisco. Last year, you had closed your $75 million, Fund 2. Give us an update on the firm. Where you at with deployment? What are the notable updates at 1984?
Look, we're halfway through deploying our second fund. We're also fortunate in sticking to a 3-year investment period. So we don't need to go out to market until next year. And we're very fortunate that we have stuck to just enterprise software, real applications, and have avoided what I'd call speculative tech. And I really can't stress this enough. Speculative tech makes for great stories with LPs. Very rarely ever that makes for great investments. And so our story was unsexy, but this year it's looking a lot sexier than before. So we need to evolve with the times.
Congratulations, sir. Any other developments at the firm worth mentioning?
Yes, we just promoted Samit, who is a principal with us, to a partner. So we're now a team of 4 partners. We're really excited.
Wonderful. Samit is one of the best. We actually recently promoted one of our own, Zeke Trezise, to associate. Hey, Rami, both you and Newstack closed our funds in late 21. We were the beneficiaries of a pretty abundant fundraising environment. What happens to the VC funds that are going out to raise this year?
It's going to be tough. Yeah, it's going to be very tough, right? The family offices have been burned spectacularly because the family offices that were excited about venture generally were also excited about crypto. They're the ones that were more adventurous. And it's very hard to be like, oh, I'm really into venture, but really not into crypto. Right? So part of their portfolio is down 90%. And then institutions are obviously going to have to rejig their existing commitments. But a lot of institutions are looking at their VC and realizing they're not going to get liquidity back for a while. And ideally, institutions are able to really look through their existing managers and cycle through and part ways with the ones that are not performing and embrace a new of the younger ones, emerging managers that are. But obviously, that's very hard to do. That's the beauty of this industry is you get these institutions and put 3-5 funds in a row before they pull back. So it's going to be interesting for a lot of institutions to accept new managers. But my advice to folks starting a VC fund really is try to spend your time where there's product market fit. So first, find pools of capital that are excited about your strategy. You're investing in the US. People in the developing world, actually, their economies might be struggling.
Sure.
Yet a lot of folks are trying to get their money out. Maybe focus on family offices and maybe in Asia or in LATAM. or find parts of the world that has abundance of capital, like the Middle East. The Middle East right now is they are awash in cash because of oil prices.
Yes,
and they have been very aggressive about venture. So don't go just take a meeting with the hundreds of meetings with Sindana trying to beg them to add you to their list of 10 funds. It's just going to be a waste of your time.
There you have it. The hot take of the day. Rami Adib says, go to Saudi to raise your next venture fund.
That's right. That's right. Not Russia.
So Rami, my friend, last year we discussed how a rising tide raises all ships and how when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming without shorts. The tide is now out.
That's right. A lot of folks are swimming without shorts right now. And I think over the next year, we're going to uncover a lot more. We're going to see who really had the tide's going to go down further, and we will get more visibility into a lot of things. But who was really swimming without shorts were crypto, right?
Yeah.
No use case. That's really the fundamental problem. Very subtle use cases that were very minor relative to the primary use case of quick riches or pyramid schemes. Speculative techs also really struggled. Let's go to Moon, let's go to Mars, let's do space tech, capital intensive industries going to struggle. And then last, I think every business without is strong unit economics. So Bill Gurley has a great quote from a few years back, right? That if you're standing on a street corner selling dollar bills for 75 cents, you're going to be in business for as long as you have dollar bills. And I think that's what we're coming to. Capital is dear, and a lot of companies are asking themselves a very hard question. Do I have a business? Or was my business so far truly a function of spending venture capital to create revenue that is not sustainable?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of VCs out there that have to update their LTV algorithms to base it on margin dollars instead of revenue.
When you're looking right now, a lot of the VCs have not proactively changed their valuations. I think you're about to witness. The Financial Times just had a great article actually exactly to that effect. We're not marking the market. Right? And so as long as no down round took place, most VCs are not changing the valuation of their companies. But a lot of the companies, in reality, if they go out and try to raise today, they're going to get a lower valuation. Right. And so you're going to continue to see a big compression in valuations this year. I think a lot of late stage companies raised in 21 was able to survive 2022 without raising, but it will be hard for them to survive for another year. So it'll be back to market, and you'll either get down rounds, you'll see flat rounds with structure, you will see the rare up rounds, and you will see flat out, bankruptcies.
You think the majority of the reckoning happens in 23? I mean, some of these companies have massive war chests. We're starting to see the effects, like, Klarna's 85% reduction in valuation, and some of these companies are running out of runway. But there's still a lot of companies like Clubhouse that are, their last valuation was pretty suspect based on where people have them valued today. But founder of Clubhouse just said he's got 2.5 years of runway. So there's a lot of tech companies that can kind of ride this out after austerity measures.
Riding it out is one thing, but catching up to your previous valuation is another.
Yeah.
And that's really the question. Does Clubhouse have the world where first, Clubhouse is a consumer company, so it's almost impossible for me I can't fathom them growing back to the previous valuation. I'll tell you a story. I finished college in 2000 at the height of the first tech bubble. And I joined the hottest company at the time. It's called Tell Me Networks. Nobody's heard of it today. But literally in 1999, 2000, that company raised $230 million.
Wow.
At an $800 or $900 million valuation. And then the stock market crashed. We repriced our shares from $1.95 to a penny. Literally, I had taken a credit card loan to early exercise my options to save on taxes in June of 2000. Right after college.
Here's your first lesson.
That's my first lesson. And then 6 months later, literally, we repriced the option from $1.95 to a penny. So I have $18,000 of credit card debt.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. I'm sure it was very painful.
But then it was an amazing team that just decided, we're going to make it work. And there weren't that many other options. It was people like, Alfred Lin at Sequoia, Charles Maldau Foundation, Emil Michael, all of these were the executives at the company. And we pivoted to enterprise, grew revenue $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, $50 million. And then after 7 years, we got to $120 million in revenue. And then Microsoft acquired the business for $800 million. So it took 7 years of hard work to finally get to that valuation.
Wow.
And I was there for that entire journey. And candidly, it was a different time. I'm not a Gen Zer. I was an international student in H-1B visa. I was going to do whatever it takes. That's really the question to founders. Do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the stamina to go out today and spend the next 7 years working your butt off in order to get to that same valuation you raised at your last round? And if you don't, you might as well just pass the baton.
Well, I guess the cautionary namesake for the podcast that I chose, Full Ratchet, people will finally know what that means, and it's sad reality. But
100%. And I can't stress this enough, Nick. Founders must master their understanding of their terms and of their cap table today.
True. Yeah.
Down rounds are going to become part of our life, right? And the terms like broad-based weighted average versus narrow-based weighted average versus a full ratchet, if you don't know what these are, you have got to know them. Google them. It's really hard to actually understand the difference. They're a little complicated. There's not a good description. They at least understand what kind of anti-dilution measures you have in your fund,
right,
in documents, and what your investors are willing to do.
The technology crisis of 2008, we had an environment where real estate was assumed to always go up and to the right. It was not prepared for a correction. And many folks in the industry had never seen one. And on top of that, you had the subprime crisis, which kind of feels like the crypto underlying. We've got this ethical sort of sub-asset class within tech that largely is based on these pyramid schemes. There's some reality there, but there's a lot of ethical issues and then businesses that are Ponzi schemes. And so in a weird sort of way, you've got this environment of optimists that have never seen a correction and don't even know what some of the terms and don't even know the implications of some of the terms that will cause a reckoning in the case that they do a down round.
Look, I think I couldn't agree more. I mean, history doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes a little bit. This is closer to 2008 for tech. This is 2008 for crypto. And the difference is true financial crisis in the world, to me, is a function of speculation paired with leverage. When you have speculation and leverage, that's when shit truly, truly crash, right? And that's what happened in crypto. That's what happened in SBI, in FTX's case, right? It was speculation, but then there was leverage, right? They were borrowing the money when they were not supposed to. That's exactly what happened in 2008. A ton of leverage. People were borrowing. You borrow against your house, but then your house drops in value. It's exactly what you said, right? When things are going up, it's fine. When they start dropping, what if there's leverage? You're really screwed. But generally for tech right now, there's not much leverage in the system. There's just a massive recorrection in valuation. Right. And that's much more similar to 2000. And that's great. It means those who ought to survive will survive, at a fraction of what they were before. And those that do not have a business will just die.
100%. On top of the leverage and speculation, it's all compounded by regulatory issues, right? In 2008, subprime assets were being rated as AAA, right? And now in this environment, crypto assets had a lack of regulation. When you have these three factors compounding, it exacerbates everything. And now the reckoning has arrived.
And the Congress is united. You know what the conservatives and liberals have in common? They're both anti-tech.
Yes. So Rami, give us some of your predictions, macro predictions. Then we're going to jump into tech, but give us some macro predictions for 2023.
I intentionally try to avoid predicting what will happen next year. Exactly for the same reason that I shared with you at the beginning of this episode. Our predictions are always based on a linear extrapolation of what's happening around us. But in reality, some stuff will die and something is going to come out of left field. A good old black swan. But what is happening around us in the world right now, it's not looking great, right? There is a massive debt crisis in the developing world. There's a massive energy crisis in Europe. We could see anything from a gas rationing in Germany stifling production to possibility of a small nuclear war, to the possibility of China taking over Taiwan, or even a milder version, right? Blockading Taiwan and disrupting TSMC.
Yeah.
I don't think there has ever been a dependency on a single product as there is dependency today on chips coming out of TSMC. 90% and that dependency is not just, it's both for the West and for China. 90% of Chinese chips are imported from TSMC. Those chips are going into everything we use. TSMC to me is the scariest single points of failure that I can think of today, because it's not replaceable. Not like gas disrupting from Russia, then we're just gonna spin it up in Qatar along with the World Cup. The challenge here is we're trying to build factories in the US. It's gonna take us forever, and they're gonna be not as great as what Taiwan can do. That definitely scares me more than anything, but you never know. Which of these will hit? Which of these will not hit? I can't tell.
We're going to have to rebrand this the Doomsday episode, Rami. No, but I mean, fair point. If we can't refresh our iPhones every 2 years, that's going to be a scary outcome here, Rami.
Yep.
Okay, on to tech. Let's start out with something fun. Our friend Elon at Twitter. Rami, what do you think? Is Elon the scapegoat here, the savior, or is he ultimately liable for a platform that is flailing?
Liable. Look, people love Elon, aside from the media. If you read the media,
poor,
I think he's poor, but most people really. You should see the memes about him on TikTok. People love Tesla. I think talking about Elon just in the context of Twitter is pretty unfair. But let's take a step back. This guy has built the first successful U.S. automobile company since Chrysler, which was built in 1925. Right? SpaceX is launching a rocket a week. Like, he has done more than anyone to combat climate change and also to save democracy in Ukraine by providing them with internet.
Agreed.
Right? And people recognize that, and people like Elon for that. Okay? Now, everybody fucks up every once in a while, and he really fucked up. He should not. Twitter is a lousy media. Twitter was never top 3 social media platform. And as much as tech folks love it, and journalists love it, it's a place without much nuance. It amplifies misinformation. It rewards conflict. How do you become a successful person Twitter today? Pick up a fight, right? And so the platform has been dominated by those traits well before he joined. Now, he did try to, I don't know what exactly he was thinking. He did piss journalists off. He kicked journalists off the platform. It is a run of journalists. And so the media's coverage has been very negative, as one would expect it. When I really look at Elon and Twitter, having worked at my previous startup was acquired by Yahoo. We were Marissa Meyer's very first acquisition. So I really spent a lot of time seeing her trying to fix what was a failing media company. I'm very negative on the media industry or any website that is trying to make money from ads. And Twitter, I think, is just a waste of people's time. And unfortunately, Elon is demonstrating how much it's a waste of his own time as well. And that's really unfortunate. Right? This guy should be spending his time. He always talks about extending life's possibilities and whatnot. Dude, Twitter's not the place to extend life's possibilities.
Well, I mean, clearly it's a platform for abject manipulation of the masses. I mean, in its most obvious form, you can see it every day. And it's just so easy to manipulate people now. I think in 2020, it was like question grenades. People would throw out a question and, oh my gosh, all these people would pile on and create threads, and influencers didn't have to do any work. In 21, it was actually like authentic sharing, like how to do various things. And now in 22, it feels like just a stream of threads on life and business advice. I wonder how many of these are written by ChatGPT, actually. Well, it's my question for you so he's a part of OpenAI. So is this a part of that strategy? I don't know how open or closed the API is for Twitter, but it's the ultimate place for discourse. I mean, even though they were trying to create the world's greatest town hall, and what they really built was the world's greatest disorderly saloon, it's still an approximation of human behavior, and could be a big advantage for OpenAI.
Look, I get it.
But it is in the public domain. So it's arguable that anyone that can index content would have access. Yes?
And look, I get it. Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post. Elon Musk bought Twitter. It's appropriate.
Say more.
First, I think people really are exaggerating the power of the platform relative to the power of the voice. Right? Twitter is not a powerful platform. Trump was a powerful voice. Right? Elon Musk is a powerful voice. Kim Kardashian is a powerful voice. Kim Kardashian is not on Twitter. She's on Instagram, by the way, because her voice is better tailored to Instagram or
imagery.
To imagery. I'm on LinkedIn, very powerful on LinkedIn. That's sort of the place where if you didn't make it in the top 4, that's where sort of you play the second league. But really, I found LinkedIn to be a phenomenal place to have the kind of discourse I want to have. Slightly more nuanced, a little bit more work-related. But I think the idea that Elon would buy the platform to improve it or not improve it is just, to me, is so ludicrous. So ludicrous. Like, how are you, by what? By making product decisions, you will improve the platform? It's to me, it's in the same category as Mark Zuckerberg trying to reinvent the metaverse as the new platform, because Facebook doesn't own a platform in the physical world. Like, that's just not how consumer products evolve or take shape. It's way more. It's way more serendipitous than that.
So candidate for biggest M&A blunder of the year, acquisition of Twitter by Elon?
Definitely the biggest waste of $50 billion. I don't care about his loss of money. I care about his fucking time. This guy is going to waste so much of his fucking time.
Yeah, but the mistakes hurt and they become lessons. right? Like there was another individual that was called the greatest entrepreneur of our time, and it was Steve Jobs. He made some horrible mistakes. And in some ways, he parlayed those mistakes into successes, right? With Next and
100%, and NSBF as well.
Okay, so Steve Jobs, Apple. Let's talk Apple. Let's talk Microsoft. Last year we touched on antitrust. You can choose who to start with. Where does Microsoft and where does Apple sit right now in potential antitrust exposure?
I'm really impressed with what Microsoft accomplished with the Xbox, by the way. Remember, this is a company that never made hardware before, or its hardware attempts were all abject failures. When I was in college, I actually interned at Microsoft and worked on the Dreamcast, which was the predecessor to the Xbox. It was the greatest project ever. Right? And they've really done an amazing job building the Xbox into a platform that people love. Right now, just the brief summary is they're trying to buy Activision, Activision Blizzard, which makes Call of Duty, and other console manufacturers like Sony are freaking out that Microsoft could basically limit the game to their Xbox, and as a result, they're going after the Clayton Act, which basically trust act preventing mergers that lesser competition. And I don't know where that will end up. I think the acquisition might go through, might not go through. But what's interesting is the following, right? Microsoft today's console, the Xbox, is probably number 5 or 6. There's so many other ones ahead of it, like Steam Deck, Sony PlayStation, Nintendo Switch. They're all ahead of the Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so owning a game is not really the issue. But Microsoft, however, is the number 1 in the streaming game category, which is tiny, but it's the fastest growing gaming category, like streaming games where the game is not running on the console.
Really?
It's running on the
Microsoft
cloud.
is number 1. Huh.
And the challenge here is Microsoft does have a very, anti-competitive mode, which is Asia. Right? Microsoft has servers all over the world, which is really well tied to streaming games. And so I think the story is still unfolding. A console meets a game is really secondary. It's going to be Asia as plus a console that will end up being a very interesting leverage of dominance in one market to own the other. Very different than Amazon, by the way. Like Amazon is true. I think, and you always point this out. You always tell me, Jeff Bezos started 2 companies, not 1, right? Amazon and AWS. But the synergies are interesting, but they're not. They're hard. They're hard to sort of argue in a court of, it's a little hard to convince somebody without reasonable doubt that they're real.
I mean, the 2 other companies that seemingly they're trying to build are a healthcare company and also a streaming company, but streaming video. So AWS is complementary for the streaming business line. But
100%. Well said. Apple is different, though. It's really complicated. It's very nuanced. First of all, Apple does not acquire anybody. You got to give it to them. Right? They have just built a thing.
Yes. They built the ecosystem. Yeah.
They built the ecosystem. So I have nothing but respect for them for doing it. And so the Clayton Act doesn't apply here. Folks are going more after what's called the Sherman Act, specifically Section 1, which prohibits contracts that restrain trade. So the argument folks are making is, Apple is asking us to sign this agreement that says we have to give them 30% of our revenue in order to be in the App Store, and that restricts trade. I think lawyers will debate this over and over again, and it's going to get very nuanced, and most people are not really going to understand the arguments. But it's the far-fetched. They've built the App Store, and they're asking people to pay if you want to be on it. And you don't have to be on it. There's another device called Android, and there's another device called Samsung that you can go run on if you want to. And they have very strong arguments for why they want this closed ecosystem, for why they don't want sideloading. And also Apple actually has a different way. Apple's like Google's all about, there's a zeitgeist in the world today about privacy. And Google is against that. Like Google's terms of service are the worst on the planet. But Apple actually is in the right side of history when it comes to focusing on consumer privacy. Regulators actually like Apple. Right. Regulators like the fact that Apple is blocking Facebook from tracking its users across apps. And Apple has shown a lot of flexibility, right? Working with regulators in different parts of the world to sort of appeal to them. I think there's something in the news the other day about them possibly switching from from the proprietary Lightning on the iPhone to USB-C because their European regulators are asking to do that. Or giving payment apps access to NFC chips. I think there's something in Korea so it's very hard for me to see Apple being really decimated by the antitrust situation.
I mean, they're very smartly politically positioned. I'm sure some of it was good fortune, maybe some luck, but they have created this situation to a certain degree that really protects them and sets them up well. I mean,
right? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that Apple would be bigger than Android in the US?
Well, that plus like Android is a complement to Apple at this point because it helps them avoid any antitrust exposure, and it allows them to keep their closed ecosystem where they take exorbitant percentages of anyone that builds on it.
I will say 30% is a little high, to be honest. I think it's a little high.
When you're investing in a marketplace business, what sort of take rates do you like?
15 to 20. I mean, it depends on how much like you're really controlling supply and demand, but typically it's 15 to 20%. But it's not a marketplace. They're not.
Well, it's a version of it.
If Apple was simply an app store connecting consumers with app makers, it would become a marketplace, just a pure marketplace connecting person A with person B. But Apple is a gated community saying this is the right to run, on this user base that we own.
They own the interface. They own the only way to access the marketplace and how you do so. So, Rami, we got to talk a little crypto and FTX here. You had a very nice profile in Fortune titled "A VC Who's Been Panning Crypto Since 2017 Discusses Where He's Investing Now."
I think the best part about this article was the photograph. Your photographer deserves an award.
Correct. And what happened there is I got this notice from Fortune saying, hey, we saw this post you said shitting on crypto from 2017 and saying the whole thing is a scam. And we would like to write an article about it. And I was like, sounds great. And they're like, are you available for a call right now? And of course, I hopped on a call. And then they said, can you send us a picture? And I don't have a picture. I send them what I have. I'm like, this is crap. Can you please take a picture? And lo and behold, Nick Moran is walking into my office because he's in town.
Nick Moran.
And Nick Moran takes my phone and takes this amazing photo that is going to be, an iconic one for the fun for the ages. So thank you, sir.
Rami, I want NFT rights to that photo.
Certainly. And we're going to trade
it. And I will license it to you and the firm if you'd like.
Right? Of course. I mean, the blockchain allows you to do that, right? We can have a smart contract and the licensing and the rights will be available to everyone. It's going to be great. It's going to change how we do commerce.
Perfect.
So the key question is, Rami, where are you investing now?
I mean, of course, it is finally.
Always a pleasure to have Rami on the program and hear his insights. Tune in for part 2 of our discussion where we cover this decade's biggest losers, Google's competition with ChatGPT, Andreessen versus Tiger, and we do a quick fire round of sectors Rami's bullish and bearish on in the year ahead. Hope you can join us for part 2. Until then, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. See you next time.